Former Attorney General Bill Barr is here. He is the author of One Damn Thing After Another, Memoirs of an Attorney General. General Barr, great to see you.
Good to see you.
So Lindsey Graham addressed this yesterday. He said the solution to the cartel problem is to declare them a foreign terrorist organization and sic the U.S. military after them. Here's what he said.
That if there were an ISIS or al-Qaeda cell in Mexico that lobbed a rocket into Texas, we'd wipe them off the planet. They're doing that times thousands.
Again, he's looking for the foreign terrorist organization designation, but General Barr, you say it really doesn't matter what you call them.
That's right. The issue isn't what you label them or designate them as. The issue is how you actually deal with them and treat them. But Lindsey's bill, proposal, does not only designate them, but it also authorizes use of military force. But I do think, just designating him by himself and being happy with that really wouldn't do very much.
Yeah, the White House seems to be pushing back on the notion as well. This is Karine Jean-Pierre, Mr. Attorney General, on the designation. Here's where they stand. Listen.
Look, designating these cartels as FTOs would not grant us any additional authorities that we don't really have at this time. So the United States has powerful sanctions authorities specifically designated to combat narcotics trafficking organizations.
So you tell me what you think of that and whether or not that is the case, Mr. Attorney General. But please clue our audience in for, they've been watching this story unfold for not just years, but decades, obviously, with the cartels. And in this moment, you are bringing a big light to this subject because it's getting worse and worse, and it's killing so many Americans in this country every day. Who are these cartel members?
Well, there are tens of thousands of members, and there are some very large cartels like the Sinaloa cartel. But there are also, a number of smaller cartels that essentially act as subcontractors for the larger cartels. They control large parts of Mexico. They've completely intimidated the government or neutralized the government because they either bribe people, because they have oceans of money to do it, or they terrorize them. If a judge acts against them, if a police officer does his job, their families can be wiped out and assassinated. So it's a terrible situation, and this particular Mexican government doesn't have the will to deal with it. I think they're content to coexist and allow these cartels to operate against the United States. And, we have to be realistic about the fact that this is going to take direct American involvement to deal with these cartels. They can be destroyed. We destroyed the cartels in Colombia when we did so in the early 1990s.
Right. This idea of going after them with the U.S. military or designating them as foreign terrorist organizations, it's got some supporters. Lindsey Graham supports the use of military force. Dan Crenshaw supports the use of military force. Ted Cruz says, thanks, but I don't think we need to be using the military to invade our neighboring country. Dan Crenshaw also had an interesting point about designating them as foreign terrorist organizations. He says that would trigger something that would make it even worse. Listen to what he said.
But you don't want to designate them as that. Why? Because now you just made millions of people in Mexico valid asylum seekers. So you just massively increased our immigration problem at our border if you call them terrorists.
So speak to that idea. If you say they're terrorists who are living in Mexico and these cartels are terrorist organizations, then you give people a legal reason to come here to the United States.
Right. I think just designate them has two problems. One, it doesn't give us that much more power. It gives us more power to act directly against some of the leaders in the government for potentially colluding with the cartels. But Congressman Crenshaw is right. It allows the people to say, well, if they're terrorists, then we're legitimate refugees. So we don't get anything from it. The real question, the really only question is, how do we deal directly with these cartels? Not what we call them, what we do with them. And there is no solution other than using all the tools we have, trying to prosecute your way, indicting whoever these murderers were recently. That's not going to solve the problem.
What will?
Destroying the cartels by using every tool we have, intelligence tools, military, special operations, drones to collect intelligence and to act against them. yes, using the Mexicans that are willing to help through vetted units that we know are safe and we can trust information with. And you can do it in a very precise operation. The specter that this is invading Mexico is a red herring. No one's talking about rolling armor down there and taking over the country. We're able, operating against groups like this, such as ISIS, to be much more precise and use limited military resources to buttress the other assets that we have. But I think that's what it will take.
We're talking a lot about what we're doing about the cartels in Mexico, but we can put up the map to show how they have infiltrated the United States, Mr. Attorney General. And the American people see this happening. They know this is happening. They know there's huge transfers of money, huge networks of money right here in the United States. I mean, what are we doing to make sure that this doesn't continue to grow and spread?
Well, you're absolutely right. Not only do they have these safe havens, the fact that they have safe havens in Mexico means that they're able to sit back and do this and expand. And they've taken over our border. They control our border. And now they're moving into different areas of the country. They're using gangs that are up here, to do some of their dirty work. I'm concerned that they start using the same terror tactics up here that they do in Mexico. There was that family that was wiped out in California, along with a little kid. So if there is no solution other than acting against the terrorists. That's the head of the snake.
I want to ask you, General Barr, about the hearing that just wrapped up in Congress, and that's the first hearing of the Select Committee into the Weaponization of Government. Or not the first one, but a hearing. And there was this exchange between Elise Stefanik and the FBI director over the FBI's involvement with Twitter over the Hunter Biden laptop story. Listen here.
Were you aware that the FBI personnel were in contact with Twitter regarding the Hunter Biden laptop story?
I don't believe FBI personnel were in contact with Twitter about the Hunter laptop story specifically. I think there were people in contact with Twitter about Russian disinformation efforts.
Were you aware that the FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since December of 2019?
I can't speak to exactly when we had a laptop available.
This stonewalling, Director Wray, the American people deserve answers, and this is unacceptable.
So there's this issue, General Barr, about plausible deniability here, that the FBI might not have specifically mentioned Hunter Biden or the laptop, but it primed the pump to the degree that even Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook, said when the Hunter Biden laptop story came around, they said at Facebook, this is what the FBI is talking about.
I'm a little dubious about that. I was there at the time. I was the Attorney General, and there was a lot of pressure on the FBI to make sure there was no foreign interference in the election. And as far as I was aware, they were giving general briefings to different groups to say, be on the guard for foreign activity, like the bots that were used in 2016. And I don't know. I think we have to look exactly what those briefings were and what was being said to those companies. Because if they were saying, things like the Hunter laptop or getting too particular about the kinds of things they were looking for, that would have crossed the line, in my opinion. Now, did Zuckerberg, was Facebook really, just being good citizens here and doing what the FBI said? My guess is, like every other company, they received general briefings. And then when they were caught doing what they did, they are hiding behind the general brief. Oh, we thought that we were just responding to this general briefing. But this is going to be very fact-specific. I think we have to find out more exactly.
These are really serious allegations. I mean, this is the weaponization of the federal government. And it doesn't look like things are turning around anytime soon, Mr. Attorney General.
The whole idea that the government should be encouraging companies to take out stuff that's false that's a violation of the First Amendment. Okay, the First Amendment actually protects false speech, and for the idea that the government goes and encourages companies to exclude that stuff, to me, is a direct violation of the First Amendment. And I'd like to see some litigation to enjoin the government from that kind of stuff in the future. That's misconduct. And I think we have to address these companies through Section 230 reform of feeling that it's one thing to take something away if it's illegal, like pornography or something that actually violates the law. But just because you think something is wrong doesn't give you the right to take it down.
But as Michael Schellenberger, who was testifying this morning, said, he believes that's where the so-called censorship industrial complex is. You don't have to be a threat. You just have to be wrong in their eyes. Because some of the stuff that was wrong in their eyes turned out to be right.
Most of the important stuff turned out to be right. And that just eviscerates the First Amendment.
General Barr, always great to spend time with you. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.